Welcome. This video is predicting that there will be a black swan, unexpected shock event in the stock market on February 25th, 2026. The date that this video is posted on the social media platform that you are watching it on proves that this prediction is being made ahead of time, as does this time-stamped email. As we can see here, this email was composed on February 18th. And as does this forensic notes PDF document. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. Okay, so a black swan event is an expected shock, something that is shocking, an event that is unexpected by most people, not all people. This term, black swan event, is often associated with a financial event, but not always. So there were, for example, stock market declines. The best example probably of a black swan event in the financial market that occurred in one day would be Black Monday in 1987, when the Dow lost its record amount in terms of percent in one day, which was almost 23%. The Dow lost on that one day. It was a black swan event. Most 99.9% of people didn't expect it, although I have to say something that's unrelated to this video, but one of the things that I have been studying or interested in over the years is socionomics and the Elliott Wave principle, the founder of which, Elliott Wave International, I should say, Robert Prechter, he predicted the exact thing that happened right before it happened. He predicted Black Monday would happen. Well, anyway, on that note, this video is predicting this will happen ahead of time. This predicted black swan event on February 25th, 2026. And so also this prediction is that this will be the initial shock, the initial unexpected shock event that will be the beginning of the biggest stock market crash in all of history that will lead to the collapse of the financial system. The complete collapse. That's also a prediction, and it'll begin with February 25th in a way. You could call this a sort of beginning, this black swan event that's predicted for February 25th. So I'm not only predicting a shocking financial loss in the stock market on February 25th, but I'm also predicting that it'll be the beginning of the collapse of the financial system. Okay, now let's speak about something here. It is one thing to predict that there'll be a stock market decline, and that's not uncommon. No matter what time we are in, there's always some people that are expecting a decline in the stock market because it can go either up or down, and sometimes we have periods of decline. There are less people that are predicting a crash in the near future, but there are some people that are predicting a crash, which would be, for example, more than 20%. Well, actually, they associate a decline of more than 20% with a recession. But anyway, so there are people that are expecting a major decline. You know, they're a small minority, but they exist. There, of course. And then on top of that, there are even less people that are predicting the biggest financial stock market loss crash in history. That's an extremely small minority of people today. Okay? And in that group, what percentage of them are predicting that or believe that it will happen in the near future, as opposed to sometime within the next few years? Right? Because not everyone in that group who's expecting some kind of big stock market crash at some point, let alone the biggest in history, they don't necessarily know when exactly it will start. So the numbers of people that I'm talking about now that are predicting the biggest stock market crash in history to begin in the near future and believe it with certainty that this will be the case, that this will happen. Well, I don't know how many people are out there, but there are very few. Let's put it that way. But to predict such a thing, you could argue, is not necessarily a divine prediction from God. Because you could make a case, and there are people that make a case without the inclusion of God as part of why they believe that this will happen. Okay. In other words, what I'm saying is that it's possible. It's possible that this could happen. It's possible that in the very near future will be the beginning of the biggest stock market crash in history. There are very few people that are saying this as a prediction, but it is possible. In other words, if this happens, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's proof of the existence of God. And to be specific, the righteous Christian God of the Bible. Because, of course, there are various interpretations of that word God in our culture today. But I'm not predicting that sometime in the near future will be the beginning of the biggest stock market crash in history, and even I'm not predicting that sometime in the near future there will be a black swan event, a big shock event on a specific date. No. What I'm saying is I'm not predicting some vague timeline for a predicted black swan event. I'm predicting a precise date, February 25th. And I'm saying that specifically on February 25th will be a black swan event, and it will be the beginning of the biggest crash in history. That can only be a prediction from God if it comes to pass. Unless I'm making a video with concocted reasons for every day of the year until it finally happens, if it will even happen. But of course, only a crazy person would do that. And if you think that I'm doing that, you are the crazy person. And I will prove this is the case through the reasons that I'll be providing in this video. It is these reasons for how I know February 25th will be the date of a black swan event and the beginning of the biggest crash in all of history. It's these reasons that prove that this is not just a speculation. This is not just a guess. And it is not something that I'm doing for every day of the year until it finally happens in order to hoodwink you for some strange reason. You will see clearly that these reasons are from God, and it is very clear. You will see that it is impossible that these reasons could have been concocted in the imagination of a human being. No person is creative enough to think of these reasons. It's not possible. You'll see that. I'll demonstrate that in this video. And so when this prediction comes to pass, because of these reasons. This will prove, beyond a doubt, that the righteous Christian God of the Bible is the true God. And believe me, I know far better than you or anyone the reason and purpose for this prediction. You'll see that, though. Obviously, it'll be clear, it'll be obvious, because the reasons are from God, and you'll see that. And you'll see that no one could have imagined these reasons on their own. You'll see that. You'll just, be patient, stay tuned. But when this prediction comes to pass, that will prove these reasons, which are clearly from God. And to conclude any other way, to reach any other conclusion, makes you a fool. A complete, utter fool. Because it's completely 100% irrational to come to any other conclusion. You'll see. But that said, humans are not rational. They're not designed to be rational, and God designed them. And so that's another subject. Why is that? Well, the thing is that there's something in psychology called belief perseverance, which states that when confronted with information that contradicts a person's worldview, they block it out. It goes in one ear and out the other, and they do not think about it at all afterwards. The reason is that they are defending their worldview. Why do people do that, even though it's irrational to do so when confronted with information that disproves their worldview? Why do people do that? Because people do not want to change their worldview. Why is that? Because people are their worldview. People are what they believe. That is who they are. And to change their worldview requires them to change who they are. And they do not want to change who they are. It's a very uncomfortable thing. They would rather continue on with life as it was, and they're not even going to recognize that there was a choice that they made because they block it out. It's belief perseverance. It's a psychological phenomenon. It's as if they did not even hear the information that contradicted their worldview, which is going to happen to the majority of people that are listening to this after this prediction comes to pass. The majority of those who are listening to this who do not have a Christian worldview, the majority of you will nonetheless, even after this prediction comes to pass, will choose to forget this video. And why is that? Because you do not want there to be a righteous Christian God as the reality to your world. That is something that you do not want to happen. That is the truth. These people do not like the idea of waking up in the morning and praying to a God, for example. For them, it is icky. That is just something they do not want to happen to them. They would rather continue on with their form in various different, let's talk about the agnostic atheist worldview, religion. The hardcore fundamentalist agnostic atheist, because it is a fundamentalist religion that requires far more faith to believe than to believe that there's an intelligent designer to the universe, for example. Their religion, which is the majority, that's not true actually. When they survey people, the majority of people in the West, in America today, not in America, I mean in the West. I mean surveys in Great Britain, for example, only a minority, something like 13% are atheist or agnostic atheist. The majority of people today in the West, if asked, do they believe in a God, they'll say, yes, but not like the God of the Bible. And what they mean is that, depending on how much they've thought about it, which most people haven't thought about it very much, but what they mean is that they've been influenced by Eastern religion to some degree, like again, depending on how much they've thought about it. But they've been influenced by this Eastern Indian religion that has essentially replaced Christianity in the West. And so they will say, no, yes, I believe in God, but not like the God of the Bible. And if they were compelled to elaborate some more, if they even had the language because they had thought about it enough, they would say things like, well, this God is like the universe itself. Or I'll elaborate for them because, often they don't even have the language because people just don't think about these things much. So they would say, well, he's an impersonal energy, not a personal being. And they would go, yes, nod their head. Yes, like that. Yes, that's right. Yes, that's what they would say. They would agree. And if you were to encounter someone who'd thought about it more, they'd use terms like collective unconsciousness, universal consciousness. What really all of this is what's called pantheism, which is the Eastern idea of God, which is that God is the universe itself, is an impersonal energy, and was uncreated. Well, of course, God was uncreated, but the universe being not having a beginning. But that's the opposite, or rather completely contrary to what is called monotheism. Pantheism is contrary to monotheism, which says that God is a personal being and is holy, which is a Hebrew word that means separate from the creation and not the creation itself. And furthermore, we as people are not God and need to remember that we are God, which is the Eastern view, so-called enlightenment, etc. No, in the monotheistic worldview, we are creatures that were created by God. God is separate from the creation. He created the creation. And thus he created human beings. And we are not God. In fact, we fall far short from being like God. We are sinners. But we have been created in the image of God. And how that is that we have free will. Why did God give us free will? He gave us the free will to choose, to make a choice, whether or not we want to be with God or not for eternity, or otherwise not, and go our own way in this life and be independent. And so the core belief, because every religion has a core belief and a worldview, every worldview is a religion, the agnostic atheist religion, and it is a religion, it has many parallels to religion, but the agnostic atheist religion and its core belief is there may or may not be a God, but it is impossible to know because there is no evidence for God. And so I'll lean on the side of there not being a God, but I could be pleasantly surprised. But there's no evidence for God, so why in the world should I think that there is a God? But this is the biggest lie in all of history. And materialism is a fairy tale for adults. And it is late 18th century, early 19th century thinking and science when they figured out that, well, we have geology to explain how the rocks have lines on them and we don't need the flood to explain it anymore. I mean, that's how simplistic people are still today. They're still living in that simplistic mindset. But why is that? Because of propaganda and because, essentially, they do not want to believe that there is a God. And that's the truth. That's the spiritual truth, which is exactly the purpose of life, to make the choice. And so they are choosing to ignore the evidence, including, for example, this video. which will be evidence when this prediction comes to pass. But they will still ignore it because they do not want this to be true. And so they are making their choice. And if the Christian worldview is true, they are making the wrong choice. And they are going to the place that they are being warned of that they think there is no evidence for because of their choice, because they do not want to be with God. That's why they choose to believe the nonsense that is agnostic atheism. So hopefully this helps. Hopefully this 20-minute introduction here helps. Now let's get into these reasons for how this prediction is known, which are clearly from God. And to conclude any other way makes you a complete fool. But go ahead, be a fool. You've got the free will to make that choice. It's up to you. Okay. So this email is documenting the prediction that there will be a black swan event, an unexpected shock event in the stock market on February 25th, 2026. That's obviously a typo. As usual, the insights become more and more interesting as they stack up. So that's the thing. Bear with me. You'll see. But you need to progress through this information because it builds on itself. So don't skip ahead. But trust me, it's going to get extremely interesting. But don't skip ahead because you won't understand it as much if you do. Now, or you may not even understand it at all if you do. All right, now, so on this day, now this date, by the way, February 17th, was a date we expected relevant signs to occur. Okay, because God, in other words, God was heavily pointing to February 17th ahead of time. And I won't get into why, we'll just get into the reasons for this video here. So on this day, Jesse Jackson died. Often, the big sign of the day is the death of someone because the person symbolizes these certain things that God wants to communicate. So Jesse Jackson died, and he was a protege of Martin Luther King Jr. JJ, from now on, JJ will stand for Jesse Jackson in the rest of this video. JJ was with King when he was killed. Jesse Jackson is equal to 131 in simple English gematria. A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3. So by the way, what I'm reading here are notes. This is notation form for people that already know what I'm talking about. So it's short form notations, and I'm elaborating on these notes in the video. So 131, as the person who I'm writing to already knows, equals the shots. Now, what are the shots? It's the mark of the Antichrist, the things, the injections. The reason why 131 is because G131 in the Greek concordance for the Bible is the word that means blood disease. God uses this, 131, for this reason. Jesse Jackson equals this in gematria. Now, the shots, of course, also are how Martin Luther King was killed on the date 4/4 in 1968, which is at the 44th president, whose name Barack Obama is equal to 68 in simple English gematria. Martin Luther King hints at the Antichrist king and also the King Apollyon in the book of Revelation. Jesse Jackson founded the Rainbow Coalition. That's astounding because that's what the date February 17th symbolizes. Because the flood judgment in the Bible began on the 17th day of the second month. And I'll just say this, I'm jumping ahead, I'm sure, but one of the reasons we knew February 17th this year ahead of time is that it was exactly 8 years after February 17th, 2018, the year ending in 8. And ahead of that date in 2018, I predicted that the Weather Channel would officially name Winter Storm Noah on that date, because that's the date on which Noah's flood began. And to begin the winter storm season, the Weather Channel has ahead of time all of the names that it'll use. And so there was a Noah on the list, and then it was obvious that, well, Winter Storm Noah will be officially named on February 17th. And sure enough, it was. This was actually, I think, the first prediction made on this video, in a way. Well, there were 8 people that were rescued in the ark after the flood began on February 17th in the Bible. That's why the addition of the 8 years to this Winter Storm Noah on February 17th in the year ending in 8. And that got us to this year when Jesse Jackson died, and he was the founder of the Rainbow Coalition. And if you know the account of the flood, it ends with a rainbow, which is symbolic of God's judgment. And so, in other words, the death of Jesse Jackson is a warning of judgment for America, because he founded the Rainbow Coalition and he died on the date February 17th. So February 17th hints at Noah's flood, and which ends with a rainbow. Also on February 17th, it was reported that Denver Nuggets coach Doug Moe had passed away at the age of 87. I should emphasize 87. If you look at the Denver Nuggets jerseys of the 80s, they have a prominent rainbow on them. In other words, this is the rainbow basketball team, and the coach that coached them in the 80s died at 87, and he died on the day of the flood date, the February 17th, and 8 people were rescued. And then the flood ended with a rainbow. That's why the coach of the rainbow jersey team, who coached this team in the 80s when they had the rainbow on their jersey, died on this day at the age of 87. The 80s Nuggets logo also featured rainbow colors. Okay, so there was a rainbow, and they were also rainbow colors on the jersey. The 80s Nuggets coach under Doug Moe were known for their gun and run, fast-paced, offensive style of play. The games were often very high scoring. This coach, Doug Moe, is actually the pioneer of this revolutionary run and gun offensive style of play. So he's famous for something, this Doug Moe guy. So Doug Moe was born 1 year and 117 days after the Golden Gate Bridge. Name Pope, okay. We're just going to skip this. And that opened 117 days after Pope Francis. And Pope Francis is the Roman Catholic emperor. And the Roman Empire reached its maximum expansion in the year 117 AD. 1117 gives us the name in the Hebrew concordance, which is Bama for Obama. That's why I want to skip. I don't want to get into too much. There's so much information to cover. We can't explain everything in too much detail because it's been explained 100,000 times already in other videos. Now, so Doug Moe, Nikola Tesla, Golden Gate Bridge. Okay, let's move on. The Nuggets currently have MVP caliber player Nikola Tesla, who operated his experimental lab in Colorado Springs, where the Denver, Colorado Nuggets played, okay, and is depicted in the movie The Prestige. Nuggets equals gold, Golden Gate Bridge, okay. Now, on February 17th, the same day as former Denver Nuggets coach Doug Moe died, there was a reported 4 deaths in a 30-car pileup on the I-25 in Pueblo, Colorado. Okay, so we have this national news story. There was a 30-car pileup in Colorado on the day of the death of the coach that coached the team from Colorado. Now, this car pileup was due to a storm, and it was on February 17th, which is symbolic of a storm because of Noah's flood, which was a storm. Now, there were 4 deaths and 30 cars, and this hints at 4 times 30 equals 120. Actually, that's a flood number. I forgot. The flood began after a warning of 120 years. God said that in this account of the flood, that the flood began after this period of 120 years. I forgot, so this is a flood number, I forgot that. Anyway, the 120 also hints at 12. Okay, and there's more reasons for this, and so I'll explain. Why 12? Well, on this day, there was a solar eclipse, and it peaked at 12:12, universal time. The crash with the 4 deaths was in the Four Corners state that has 4 corners. If you know what I'm talking about, there's the Four Corners states in America. There's a monument where all the 4 corners of these states meet, called the Four Corners Monument. Only one of those states itself has 4 corners in its geography. That's Colorado. So the Four Corners state with 4 corners, there was 4 deaths on this day, and this day was 4 days after the quad god, quad being 4, and 4-time U.S. national men's figure skating champion crashed. And then again on the same day was or 4 days after the 4-time champion crashed, was the 4 deaths in the crashes in the Four Corners state with 4 corners. Okay. Okay, and not only was the eclipse on this day, not only did it peak at 12:12 UTC time, the eclipse ended at 14:27 UTC time, and G 14:27 in the Greek concordance for the Bible is the word 12. Also, it was 9:27 a.m., 14:27 UTC was 9:27 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wall Street, which hints at Daniel 9:27, the last verse of the most central prophecy in the Bible that regards the end times period and the Antichrist. So, the high-scoring strategy from the coach is symbolic of the high-scoring value on Wall Street before this crash that I'm talking about or predicting. The coach, known for coaching the Rainbow team and who died on the date that hints at the rainbow because of Noah's flood, is known for being an 80s coach. 217 is 8 days before February 25th, which will be 311 weeks exactly after the Black Swan event on March 11th, 2020. And February 25th will be exactly 60 plus 60 plus 60 months after Natalie Portman won the Oscar Award for Best Actress for the movie Black Swan. Okay, this was how this date was first discovered. It was first discovered through the very first time this date was discovered, February 25th, that God was pointing to it, was discovered when it was realized that it would be exactly 311 weeks after the date 311. Okay? In 2020, which was the which I didn't recognize as being a Black Swan event at the time. But then once this connection was realized, I realized, well, wait a second, of course. The big Black Swan event of our current time was Coronavirus Day, March 11th, 2020. The 6 plus 60 plus 60 plus 60 months connection hints at 666, the number of the Antichrist. The 3 and the 1s, God uses these combinations of 2 1s and a 3, as for the reason I already explained way back here with the name Jesse Jackson, which is equal to 131. It hints at blood disease. Coronavirus Day, the big day, was on the date 3/11 because it hints at blood disease, which is the result of taking the thing that supposedly counters the coronavirus. Now, I want to say something here too. It was in November of 2019 that I was documenting in videos on a channel that unfortunately no longer exists because of cancel culture, that something very big, bad, and world-changing was going to happen on March 11th, 2020. And I wasn't saying that about any other date in the calendar in 2020. And I was saying that back in November of 2019, long before anyone had heard of coronavirus. It was early November, in fact, but the world didn't first hear, the first news report of it was on December 31st, which is why it is called COVID-19, because it came out really on the last day of the year 2019. But anyway, early November 19th was long before December 31st. Anyway, I was saying that something very big, bad, and world-changing was going to happen on March 11th, 2020, and I wasn't saying that about any other date. And I didn't know what it would be, in fact, until March 11th. I didn't know what it would be on March 10th. Up until March 10th, I thought it would be perhaps maybe a dirty bomb explosion in New York City or something. But I didn't even though the coronavirus was in the news in early March, I still didn't know what the event would be on March 11th. But then March 11th came, and that was the day that the World Health Organization officially declared coronavirus to be a pandemic. And God uses firsts for prophetic signs. And one of the ways I knew about March 11th, 2020 is because of a first, the first president. But I'll explain that in a second. Also on March 11th, the other firsts on March 11th, the symbolic beginnings of coronavirus, was when the NBA shut down, the first sports league, which ended up leading to everything getting shut down. And that was after the first player tested positive. And coincidentally, this player who tested positive had been in the news just a couple of days before this for having mocked coronavirus in a press conference when he jokingly put his hands on the microphone and all over the table in front of the journalists who were laughing. He ended up being the guy that was in the news for mocking coronavirus was the guy that began all of the shutdown. And on that day also, March 11th, 2020, the first celebrity tweeted that he had coronavirus, Tom Hanks, which he said he got while he was in Australia at the time. On March 11th, he was tweeting from Australia, where he was in the movie being filmed he was in the filming of the movie Elvis, the new Elvis Presley movie named Elvis. The King, as in King Apollyon, described in Revelation 9:11, which is why on March 11th, 2020, Trump's speech from the Oval Office, he only gave 3 Oval Office speeches in his presidency regarding coronavirus, ended precisely as the clock on the live TV news screen ticked 9:11 p.m., as in Revelation 9:11. King Apollyon, as in the king of rock and roll. Now, one of the ways I knew about I'll say this first also. 1 year later, exactly on March 11th, 2021, Joe Biden gave his first speech, as in a parallel with Trump's speech that ended at 9:11 p.m. Exactly 1 year later, Joe Biden gave his first speech after being installed in the White House. replacing Trump. And that was the big VACCINE speech. Anyway, at the beginning of his speech, his first, as in God uses firsts, public address since having been installed in the White House, the very first thing he said to the public was how March 11th, 2021 was the anniversary of coronavirus. And so the president, or rather the installed president, agrees with me that March 11th, 2020 was Coronavirus Day. And many other people obviously also recognized this, but I'm just saying, it really was Coronavirus Day. The president even said so, the so-called president, who, by the way, is named Joseph, and Joseph in the Bible was the 11th son of the third patriarch, which is why his first public address was on the date 3/11. And when he said it was the anniversary of Coronavirus Day. And so, in other words, back in November of 2019, I predicted COVID. It's clear. I predicted COVID. If you can't recognize that, I feel sorry for you, because you don't have a strong rational intellect. So I predicted COVID, okay? And one of the ways I knew about March 11th, 2020 ahead of time, the date that Trump ended up delivering a speech that ended at 9:11 p.m., I knew about March 11th, 2020 ahead of time because it was exactly 222 months after 9/11 in 2001. Why is 222 months relevant? Well, through the events of 9/11, God pointed to George Washington, the first president. And he was born on the date 222, February 22nd, hence the 222 months connection. George Washington became the first president in Lower Manhattan, where the events of 9/11 took place. He was inaugurated in Federal Hall on Wall Street. This video is predicting the collapse of Wall Street, specifically with a Black Swan event to begin this crash on February 25th this year. After his inauguration, he marched down Wall Street, which was a parallel with the Israelites who marched around the walls of security of Jericho, led by Joshua, who died at the age of 110. And on 9/11, 110 stories collapsed near Wall Street and engendered a small earthquake that cracked the foundation of Federal Hall, where Washington was inaugurated before marching down Wall Street into Trinity Chapel, the only building at Ground Zero that survived the falling debris. Today it is nicknamed the Miracle Chapel. It survived and did so without even a broken window due to the 70-year-old sycamore tree that was uprooted as it sheltered the chapel. Today, there is a huge 20-foot-high bronze statue of the roots of the tree that was uprooted in the process of sheltering the chapel. Every 9/11, I should say, there is a thing called the 365-day Bible, which is standard among denominations, including Catholics. It is a Bible that's divided into readings for every day of the year, a portion of the Bible. And every September 11th includes the portion of the Bible that is Isaiah 9:11, which was the warning for ancient Israel after the raid of the ancient Assyrians, the first documented world's terrorists. The first documented terrorists in the world as in firsts, who raided the northern kingdom and uprooted the sycamore trees, as it says, Isaiah 9:11. The bricks have fallen, but we will rebuild with quarried stone, and the trees have been uprooted. Or it's the reverse order, but we will replace them with the sycamore trees have been uprooted, and we will replace them with this other type of tree called an Erez tree. Well, it was a warning, and once the warning wasn't heeded, the kingdoms were destroyed and the Jews were exiled to Babylon for 70 years, which is why the tree was 70 years old, the 70-year-old sycamore tree. And this is also why the North Tower was hit first, because the ancient Assyrians raided the northern kingdom of the two north and south kingdoms. Okay, so that's how I knew. Now, I've told that story countless times to people, and maybe one or two times out of the countless, I mean like maybe 1,000, maybe a couple of thousand times I've told that. Maybe I've told that story, okay, to people, like in detail, like I have just done. Maybe only one person accepted it. But that person, I was about to say one person changed their worldview. But that person, I think, already had, to a degree, a Christian worldview. And there's been more than one person that's helped their nascent Christian worldview, if you will. Okay? No one has changed their worldview. If they were agnostic atheist or New Age or Islam before telling the story, I take that back. There might be one sort of Muslim that changed their worldview. Anyway, you get my point. This is enough to change a person's worldview, and it should be after hearing this, because either I'm a liar or I'm delusional. But those two explanations don't make any sense, because you still have the 222 months to deal with. So, okay, so if I'm lying and I discovered the 222 months connection after the fact, and then concocted all of the reasons like George Washington and 222 and everything that I just explained, and Trump's speech ending at 9:11 p.m., well, that's quite something. If I concocted all of that reasoning after the fact. But if you are a reasonable person, that explanation's not going to make any sense. And the only explanation you are left with, if you think about it, is that it proves that I predicted COVID, and therefore it proves the righteous Christian God of the Bible. Now, if you are like an extremist, if you are a fundamentalist, hardcore agnostic atheist, okay, you require the video. Okay, I get it. You are really, really stubborn. I get it. Okay. But this video, you are able to see, is being produced ahead of time. Look at the post date of the video on the channel you are watching it on. Again, look at the beginning here, where this email is documented as having been composed on February 18th. That's before February 25th. Okay? So what are you going to do now? I'm still a liar? I'm still delusional? What are you going to do now? I predicted COVID, and my explanation that I just gave was enough. If you are a rational person. But I understand human beings aren't rational. So it's very rare for a rational person to be listening to this. You'd be quite the exception. But what are you going to do now? Now that I've predicted this, in addition to predicting COVID. I predicted COVID. Do you get it? Do you understand? I predicted COVID. What are you talking about? There's no righteous Christian, there's no evidence for God. I predicted COVID. What in the world are you thinking? I came up with 222 months after the fact and decided to lie about it and talk and coincidentally discovered that Trump's speech ended at 9:11 p.m.? Are you kidding? And I mean, give me a break. Just stop. Accept that belief perseverance exists, it's a real thing, and get over it. Change your worldview, because if the Christian worldview is true, you're in a lot of trouble. I mean, you are in a lot of trouble. Think about it. There's consequences to you dismissing this now. It's not just nothing. You can't just go, oh, well, if there's a God, I'll find out after I die. That's the core agnostic belief. There may or may not be a God, but I'll find out when I die, and there's no evidence, so, what can I do? I'll just find out when I die. You're wrong. It's a lie, and you choose to believe the lie because you don't want to believe in a righteous Christian God. But you're going to pay for that decision and choice. And that's the purpose of this video, to prove this to you. Okay? Well, there's more purposes than just that, but now let's move on. So, we were saying about how this February 25th date, this predicted collapse on Wall Street, connects back to 9/11 near Wall Street and the cracking of the foundation of Federal Hall, which, by the way, symbolized the cracking of America's foundation, which was foundation in God being cracked. And the reason why God pointed to the chapel, I forgot the most important part. The reason why God pointed to the chapel where George Washington went into after his inauguration is because inside the chapel he consecrated the nation to God, saying that if the nation were to ever turn away from God, it would lose its divine protection and blessings, which it temporarily did on 9/11 when God pointed to the miracle chapel where George Washington went into. It was the warning, just like the warning in Isaiah 9:11. Okay. The coach known for coaching the Rainbow team, who died on the date that symbolizes the Noah's flood and the rainbow, is known for being an 80s coach. Did I already say this? Yes. And again, I'll just say it again though. So February 17th again was 8 years after Winter Storm Noah, exactly 8 years. And Noah, there were 8, including Noah on the ark. And that Winter Storm Noah was in the year that ended with an 8. But exactly 8 years later was this February 17th date, and we had these rainbow signs, including Jesse Jackson and the death of the rainbow coach, okay? But 8 days after this is February 25th, which will be like the Noah's flood in the stock market. And this date will be 311 weeks after 3/11 in 2020, the big Black Swan event, because that was a Black Swan event, the unexpected shock of everything shutting down on March 11th all of a sudden. That's the definition of a Black Swan event. So that's why 311 weeks after the Black Swan event on 3/11 is amazing, especially given the fact that it's also exactly 60 plus 60 plus 60 months after Natalie Portman won Best Actress for Black Swan. That gives us a second witness confirmation. And this is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter, as the Bible says is required. And this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. By the way, not only was it the death of the 80s coach 8 days before the predicted Black Swan event, but it was also the death of the 80s presidential candidate, Jesse Jackson. Okay, who also died at the age of 84. We'll get into that. I was actually just jumping ahead there. Now, one thing too is that February 25th is not only 8 days after February 17th, and these signs that I'm talking about in this video, but this is also 4 plus 4 days. And on that day was the crash on the highway that killed 4 people in the Four Corners state that has 4 corners. And we're predicting a crash 4 plus 4 days later on Wall Street. And the crashes were on a road, a street, the interstate. And it was in Colorado, the crashes with the 4 deaths on the same day that the coach from the team for Colorado died. Anyway, the crashes were on the I-25 northbound to Denver, where the Colorado basketball team played. And the I-25 hints at the 25th day of February. And it's 8 days after the death of the 80s coach from Denver. Northbound, Denver bound, I-25. Okay. The coach died at 87. He was associated with the 80s Nuggets, Denver Nuggets team. This hints at the 8th of 7 kings in the prophecy in the book of Revelation. He died on the same day that Martin Luther King protege died. He also died in his 80s. Jesse Jackson, died at 84. Arguably, the most famous thing Jackson did was run for president in 1984. He died at 84. He was a forerunner for the first black president who was born on the date 84. And the name Obama is equal to 84 in Hebrew gematria. And also the 8th through 7 kings prophecy identifies the Antichrist, Barack Obama. And it's about the Antichrist, the 8th through 7th king's prophecy. All right. The secondary fulfillment of it is Barack Obama. The first, because there's 2 fulfillments of this. It's all symbolism. It's all allegory. The first of the 2 kings is Pope Francis, the first of the 2 antichrists. All right. Who died at the age of 88, incidentally. Speaking of 8s. 8th king. Pope Francis died at 88 because he's the 8th king in this prophecy. This is the 8th through 7th king's prophecy, and the coach died at 87 on the same day that the protege of Martin Luther King died. Okay. Sure enough, this is correct. JJ is known for paving the way for Barack Obama. When I made this statement in this paragraph here, I was just going from pure memory. I hadn't looked at the news. All I knew is that Jesse Jackson had died. I hadn't, read any headlines or read any articles. But sure enough, that's what the articles were talking about. How he paved the way for Barack Obama, which is exactly what I had just said. And I said it before I repeated it from the media. I'm just showing you my intuition is all. But anyway, it's correct. The media talked about how Jesse Jackson was known for paving the way for Barack Obama, the Antichrist, which is why he died at 84. Obama was born on the date 84, and the name Obama is equal to 84 in gematria. JJ was born in the year 41 in Greenville in the 4 plus 4th state. Green is the 4th color of the rainbow. The 4th horse in the apocalypse is the green horse. Okay, and he was born in 41 because the key to the bottomless pit opens to the King Apollyon, as in Martin Luther King, and key is equal to 41 in gematria, simple English gematria. A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3. Okay. JJ was born to an unmarried 4 times 4-year-old. Obama was born on the date 8-4 to an unmarried 6 plus 6 plus 6-year-old. And the irony of ironies is that Obama, the leader of the abortion party, political party, would never would not exist today had abortions been legal in Hawaii, not coincidentally, the first state to legalize abortions, because it points to Obama and how he wouldn't exist had there been abortions. That's why Hawaii was the first state to legalize abortions, the 50th state, which is also incidentally why Obama is predicted to become the 50th president and the Antichrist, after his wife Michelle Obama will become the 49th president. Now, JJ died at 84. Obama equals 84. He was born on the date 8-4. JJ was with King when he was shot on the date 4-4 in the 4 times 4th state in the year 68. And Barack Obama is equal to 68 in simple English gematria. Now, Martin Luther King was shot and killed with JJ in Memphis, Little Egypt, near the king of rock and roll's mansion, which is at the king of Egypt in the Bible in his palace. Memphis is in Little Egypt of America, nicknamed Little Egypt America. Memphis is in the area of America that is nicknamed Little Egypt, and Memphis, of course, is named after Memphis, Egypt, as in the king of Egypt and his palace, which is what the king's mansion symbolizes, which is why King was shot right near the king's mansion. Because in the Bible, the king of Egypt is a type for the Antichrist, Barack Obama. Now, JJ gives us 10 and 10, the 10th letter of the alphabet. That gives us a sum of 20, which is equal to 9 plus 11, which hints at Revelation 9:11, and King Apollyon, which is what is hinted at with Martin Luther King Jr. JJ was born in the year 41, which gives us the word key, 5 days, which hints at the 5th trumpet, which includes the description of the key that opens the bottomless pit to King Apollyon. So JJ was born in 41, 5 days before the birth of Paul Simon. Whose best-selling album as a solo artist was Graceland, about the king's mansion in Memphis, including in the lyrics of the song Graceland is how I'm going to Graceland, Memphis, Tennessee, I'm going to Graceland. JJ was with King near Graceland. And so they were born only 5 days apart because it's the key, right? And also, music is composed with music keys. The 5th trumpet in Revelation 9:11 gives us King Apollyon, 9 plus 11, which gives us JJ, as I just explained. It's amazing. JJ was with King when he was shot with a gun by James Earl Ray, who ran from the scene of the crime. Famously, was later tracked down and arrested in Great Britain. He literally fled the scene. He ran from the scene after he shot the king, or Martin Luther King, I should say, with a gun. JJ died on the same day as the death of the pioneer of the run and gun style of offense. Wow. Right? I don't know how these things come to me. We have to conclude it's the Holy Spirit because, this just came to me, right? He was the pioneer of the run and gun offense. And wait a second, King was shot with a gun by a man who ran. And JJ, who was with King, died on the same day as the death of the pioneer of the run and gun style of offense. And this is how God signs works. Like I said, it works on the second witness principle to confirm the matter. What kind of second witness could you ask for other than this? This is amazing, right? Now, JJ was with King when he was shot with a gun by James Earl Ray, who ran from the scene. JJ died on the same day as the death of the run and gun coach. JJ was known for running 2 times for president. JJ gives us 10 and 10 and 20. 20 plus 2 times, because JJ ran for president 2 times, equals 22. And 22 in God's signs is the number that he's using to symbolize the mark of the Antichrist, which is the shots which come out of guns. Why does the number 22 symbolize the mark of the Antichrist? Because in the inverse of the mark of the Antichrist in the book of Ezekiel in the Bible, it would have been a Tav mark, the last letter and 22nd letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and the mark of the Antichrist is described in the last and 22nd book of the Bible that has 22 that is the 22nd book out of 22 books in the Bible that have a total of 22 chapters. And also the mark of the Antichrist changes a person's chromosomes, which come in pairs, and each chromosome has 2 arms, so 2 and 2. JJ paved the road for the 44th president. On the day that JJ died, the 30-car pileup that caused 4 deaths was on the road in the Four Corners state that has 4 corners. And JJ paved the road for the 44th president. He was also with King when he died on the date 4/4 in the 4 times 4th state. But on the day that JJ died, there was 4 deaths in a car pileup in the Four Corners state that has 4 corners on the road, as in the road to the 44th president. Amazing. Who, by the way, this just came to me and it should have come to me before. The crashes were on the northbound to Denver, which is where the 44th president held his Democrat Party acceptance speech at the convention in Denver. That's right. JJ died, the guy who paved the way on the road by running for president. He paved the road for Obama, the 44th president, and he died on the day of the 4 deaths in the Four Corners state that has 4 corners that died on the road to Denver, and on the road to the 44th presidency, Obama held his Democrat national acceptance speech in Denver. Stunning. The car pileup on the highway is symbolic of the clogged arteries caused by the shots, which is why the car pileup and clogged travel artery was in the state where the run and gun, as in shots, as in clogged arteries, pioneer coached. VACCINE is equal to 57 in simple English gematria. The clogged travel artery in the Four Corners state that has 4 corners, where the run and gun pioneer coached occurred exactly 5 times 7 months, as in the VACCINE, as in the shots from guns, before the 44th president will return to the White House at 4 times 400 Pennsylvania Avenue. Okay, so this is February 17th. It's not exactly 5 times 7 months. Okay, but nonetheless, the clogged travel artery and the death of the coach of the team from the Four Corners state that has 4 corners was on the day of the White House, was on the day of the White Rabbit eclipse. Why was it the White Rabbit eclipse? The eclipse that was over Antarctica on this day was the White Rabbit eclipse, because, long story short, the asteroid named White Rabbit was in conjunction with the eclipse. That's another subject. You just take my word for it, but it hints at the White House. And furthermore, Obama every Easter at the White House stood next to one of his staff members dressed up in a white rabbit costume on Easter. JJ paved the road for the 44th president when JJ ran for president 2 times. The 44th president will return to 4x400 Pennsylvania Avenue, and Pennsylvania is the second state. 4x400 Pennsylvania, second state Avenue, also hints at the 44th president serving 2 terms. The name of Jackson's biological father is Noah Robinson. That's right. And JJ died on the date that hints at Noah and the flood. But this is astounding too, because I've just now explained how it connects to January 20th, 2029, 5 times 7 months later, which is when it is predicted that Michelle Robinson Obama will become the 49th president with Barack as her vice president. Doug Moe played in the NBA, and he was the 22nd pick in his draft. All right. And anyway, Doug Moe gives us D and M, or 4 and 13, which is equal to 17, which hints at the date 217. The 22nd pick and the guy's name gives us 217, the date that he died. In other words, we could have predicted the date that he would die. I mean, obviously, you would need the Holy Spirit to have recognized this, but it could have been recognized ahead of time. The men's figure skater who fell while wearing a black swan outfit that is transgender. Oh, sorry, to make this sentence better. The men's figure skater who fell was wearing a black swan outfit that was transgender. I'm not saying he was transgender. I'm just saying his outfit is. Why did I say that? Oh, because of the connections to the rainbow here. And that was 4 days before the 4 deaths in the crash. So he crashed. And by the way, this is a continuation of another email thread, which is how this collapse, this crash of the figure skater was a black swan event. Because he was dressed like a black swan. We have the movie Black Swan, which Natalie Portman won Best Actress for portraying a ballerina. And figure skating is like ballet. And this guy was wearing a very, very feminine, elegant black swan outfit. It was all black, and he crashed. But it was a black swan event because it was completely unexpected and shocking, because he was the heavily favored to win. And he had dominated the figure skating world for the past 3 or 4 years. So it was a shock. It was a black swan event. Anyway, he's also known as the quad god, quad being 4, and he's the 4-time U.S. champion. And he crashed. His black swan event was 4 days before the 4 deaths in the crash in the Four Corners state that has 4 corners. On the day that JJ died, who was with King on the date 4-4 in the 4x4th state when Martin Luther King died. Okay. JJ was born of a man named Noah Robinson. JJ founded the Rainbow Coalition in '84, the same year he first ran for president. He, in the present form of that verb, he run for president. He died at 84 on the same day as the death of the run and gun pioneer who coached the team with rainbows on its uniform in the 80s, the same decade the son of Noah run twice for president. JJ was with King when he was shot, as in Mark of the Antichrist, shots in the 4 times 4th state, as in the Mark of the Antichrist that will be enforced by the 44th president. Coach Mo coached the team from the Four Corners state with 4 corners. The headquarters of the Rainbow Coalition is in the south side of Chicago. Michelle Obama is from the south side of Chicago. Coach Mo hints at M.O., Michelle Obama. JJ's father, Robinson, hints at Michelle Robinson. And again, all of this is 5 times 7 months, which hints at the VACCINE, before Michelle Robinson and the 44th president will return to the White House. So you see how clever this is? Through both of these people, God pointed to Michelle Robinson. Through JJ, through his father's name Robinson, Noah Robinson, which ties it to JJ, who died on the Noah's flood date, and through Coach Mo, because Coach Mo coached the team from the Four Corners state that has 4 corners, and there was the crash of the 4 deaths on the day that he died in Colorado. And he's the run and gun, as in JJ, who ran for president and was with King when the guy shot him with the gun and then ran, okay? And so Mo gives us M.O., Michelle Robinson. M.O. is also relevant, by the way, because there will be a crash, a plane crash, that will lead to Michelle Robinson becoming the president. That plane crash will be in the state of Missouri, M.O., abbreviated by M.O. That's the abbreviation for Missouri. That crash will involve Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom, the running mates in 2028, who will then be replaced in an emergency with Michelle Obama and Barack Obama. Now, this date, February 17th, is 1,068 days precisely before M.O. Robinson will return to the White House as president, and she will return to the White House for a second time. JJ is said to have paved the way by running for president. 1,068 is the 888th composite number, a number that isn't a prime number. M.O. will return to the White House as a result of a plane crash in the 8 plus 8 plus 8th state. Mo coached the team from the 38th state, which is at 3/8. And on the day that he died, there was a prophetic crash in the 38th state, 3/8. The sum of the divisors of 1,068 is equal to 2,520, which is the number of days that symbolizes the end times period of the Antichrist, making this a second witness to the relevance of this number 1,068, which is also the 888th composite number. And again, that's relevant because of everything pointing to Michelle Robinson, who will come to the White House through a plane crash in the 8 plus 8 plus 8th state, which is in the state with M.O. as its abbreviation, as in Michelle Robinson Obama. JJ founded the Rainbow Coalition, was born in the 8th state, and Noah was with 8, including himself, 8 people on the ark. Okay? And he died, the founder of the Rainbow Coalition died on the 8th anniversary of Winter Storm Noah in the year ending in 8. JJ ran for president twice in the 80s. Doug Mo was known as the coach of the team from the 38th state, as in 3/8, during the 80s. The name Doug Mo is equal to 80 in simple English gematria. The fact that Doug Mo's name is equal to 80 is a second witness to how he is the 80s coach, which is the confirmation for adding 8 days to the death of Doug Mo to reach the predicted date of the Black Swan event. a a flood or winter storm Noah event, if you will. It will be a storm on the stock market. Let's put it that way. JJ was with King when he was killed on the date 4-4 in the 4 times 4th state. JJ died, and he was born, by the way, to unmarried mother who was 4 times 4 years old. JJ died on the day of the death of the coach of the team from the Four Corners state with 4 corners. The team plays in Denver, and the coach died on the day that 4 people were killed in a car pileup on the Denver-bound interstate in the Four Corners state with 4 corners. 4 people died in the crash. That was 4 days after the crash of the quad god and 4-time U.S. champion. The figure skater crashed while dressed in an elegant black outfit. It was a black swan financial markets crash prophetic warning. 4 days after the crash of the quad god and 4-time U.S. champion was the crash on the interstate in the Four Corners state with 4 corners, in which 4 people died. And it was on Interstate 25. This was the day of the death of the coach of the team from the Four Corners state with 4 corners, who coached the team in the 80s, and his name is equal to 80. The coach died on the day of the death of the black American who famously ran for president a couple of times in the 80s and was known for being a Southerner from the 8th state. 8 days after the death of the 80s presidential candidate, the death of the pioneering coach of the 80s, and the crash on the Interstate 25 will be the 25th of the month. It is predicted that on the 25th of the month, there will be a black swan event in the financial markets and stock market. The predicted black swan event will be 12 days after the crash of the black swan 21-year-old, which 21 hints at 12, reverse of 21 is 12, while he skated last and 12 plus 12th in the lineup of skaters. The fans were shocked at his unexpected crash, making it a black swan event. He had been in the lead by 5 points, which is apparently a lot, according to this news articles, and his crash was 5 days after the Seahawks and the 12s fans won the Super Bowl. Okay, and yeah. And on the day of the death of the coach and JJ, 4 days after the death of the 4-time champion, was the eclipse that was at 12:12 UTC time and ended at 14:27, which is in the Greek concordance the word for 12. So that's the reason for the Seahawks winning the Super Bowl, because their fans are famously nicknamed the 12s. Which is why 5 days from the 12's victory was the black swan crash of the skater who was ahead by a lot, which was 5 points. The black swan figure skater unexpectedly finished in 8th place, which further confirms the addition of the 8 days from the death of JJ and the coach. But as I think I'm going to say here, I'm jumping ahead, unfortunately. Why don't I just read the whole thing? Okay. The black swan figure skater unexpectedly finished in 8th place, making it a black swan event. It was 8th place. His nickname is Quad, as in 4, God, and he is the 4-time U.S. champion. 8 plus 4 equals 12. 8 plus 4 hints at 84. The 44th president was born on the date 8-4, and Obama is equal to 84 in gematria. The black swan skater finished in 8th place, and the 4-time champion goes by the nickname Quad God. That gives us 84. 4 days after his finish in 8th place. So his 8th, is the 4-time champion's finish in 8th place was 4 days before the Black Swan crash. The Black Swan skaters crash was the 8th place Black Swan finish was 4 days before the death of JJ, who paved the way for Obama, who hints at 84, and he died at 84, and he ran for president in 84. The 84 campaign of the first serious black presidential candidate was a Black Swan event in American politics. It paved the way for the 8 years in office for the 44th president and first black president, who, by the way, was elected in the year 08. He was elected in 08. He served 8 years, and he was the 44th president. That in itself is an 84, which is what is hinted at with the campaign in 84 of the guy who died at the age of 84, who died on the day that was 4 days after the 8th place finish of the 4-time champion and who was the Black Swan skater, which is all confirmation for adding 8 days to the death of the Black Swan presidential candidate, whose candidacy was a Black Swan event in American politics. You see, that's all confirmation for adding 8 days to his death. Furthermore, he was the candidate in the 80s, like I said. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Do not listen to or follow the example of most quote-unquote Christians. Instead, follow the teachings of Jesus, which most quote-unquote Christians ignore. Like Jesus, you must surrender your life. Put nothing ahead of Jesus, your Lord. Like Jesus, you must lay down your life so that you may live. As Jesus said, one must die first, like a kernel of wheat going into the ground, in order to then grow and produce fruit. And like Jesus said, one must produce fruit, or else like a branch or a tree not producing fruit, they will be thrown into the fire. Jesus was speaking to quote-unquote Christians when he said this. One must die the self in order to be born again. And like Jesus said, one must be born again to enter the kingdom. Like Jesus, you must sacrifice your life for the sake of the coming kingdom. It means to do work that involves some form of sacrifice and risk. To have faith does not mean to intellectually agree. You need to demonstrate your faith through taking action. To have faith means to trust in God's promises. Taking action demonstrates trust and fear of the Lord. The primary reason that the wrath of God is coming upon America is quote-unquote Christians that do not get what I have just explained. The only reason a Christian is alive is in order to help other people become Christians and make it to the kingdom. Do not be deceived by those on the political left claiming to be quote-unquote Christians. There is no such thing as a Christian on today's political progressive left. Jesus said, "Do not think I have come to abolish or change any bit of the law or the prophets of the Old Testament Bible." In other words, the God of the Old Testament Bible is the exact same God of the New Testament Bible. It is essential that you learn about the God of the Bible and his ways. The God of the Old Testament Bible is looking to see who will fear him, and to fear God is not the same thing as quote-unquote revering or honoring God. Through Christ's ransom payment, a Christian is someone who has been redeemed and freed from slavery to sin and Satan. In response, a true Christian recognizes that their life in this world does not belong to them, and they become a willing slave to Jesus for the sake of the kingdom. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. And don't only put the link to this video or another video on this channel in comments sections of places you typically visit, but importantly, put the link to the video in places you never visit, where people who don't think like you visit. If you are a quote-unquote Christian, nothing in terms of an evangelism tool compares to this video with its prediction. It is a massive bag of gold. Beware of Jesus' warning through the quote-unquote Christian that did nothing with his bag of gold and was banished to hell. Also, read Ezekiel chapter 3 and 33 for this same warning. If you think you might be spending too much time watching videos instead of working and sacrificing for the kingdom through handing out flyers and potentially helping hundreds of people in the same length of time as a video, my flyer is filled with amazing information that people need to know right now, and it points people to the video channel. Now is not the time to be handing out typical evangelical tracts that are largely based in error anyway, such as, quote, Jesus loves you, unquote, for example. You can hand out the flyer on busy street corners, put them on car windshields in busy parking lots, and put them in mailboxes. Just send the file to your local print shop. You can download the file from the website. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, asteroidprediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the Odyssey.com or Rumble.com channel, and do it now in case you aren't able to later.